Hey, what's up, guys and gals? My name is Nineg. Thank you so much for joining me today. We're going to be talking about the television show Bewitched. If you're a fan of classic TV shows and movies, liking, commenting, and subscribing is the best way to support me. So I thank you ahead of time for doing so. So let's get right to it. As I mentioned, Bewitched is what we'll be talking about, and more specifically about Elizabeth Montgomery and what happened behind the scenes of the show Bewitched. Now, I don't make videos like this to put any actor or actress down. On the contrary, I always see myself as a student of history, and I love to look at the good and the bad of history and see how this can relate to our own lives and see how this relates to, of course, the production of a television show, how it could affect it, and so on. And I do have my thoughts on this, which I'll give later on. So this may be shocking and surprising to many of you, others may know, but Elizabeth Montgomery had a big issue while filming Bewitched. Now, she was married a total of 4 times during her life, and her third marriage was to William Asher. Other people called him Bill Asher, who was pretty much the director for the entire series, for the entire length of the show. He was also the director of I Love Lucy in many of the episodes. They essentially met, they fell in love, and they made this show together. Very similar and very parallel-esque to Desi Arnaz and Lucille Ball. Now, how we know a lot of this information is from one man. His name is Herbie Pilato. Now, Herbie Pilato was able to become a good friend of Elizabeth Montgomery, and in fact, it's well known that Elizabeth was kind of quiet and didn't really talk about her private life. But we do know that Herbie wrote a book about essentially the life of Elizabeth Montgomery, and she kind of confided in him these details that she really never told before. Now, in this book, he talks about Elizabeth Montgomery and her flaws, and he really doesn't hold back in the way he paints her and also praises her as a magnificent angel. Now, Montgomery was clearly special to him. He called her a unique soul and someone who touched everyone's hearts around her. But she was human, and like all humans, she made mistakes, and she had moments of complications like we all do, including myself, Rick 9G. And so he wanted to dive into this so we understand this woman a little deeply. Now, during the course of the show, she met a man named Richard Michaels. Now, at this time, she was married to William Asher. She had children with him. And Richard Michaels was a man who was hired as director in the series during the later season of the show. Now, upon his hiring, he hit it off with Elizabeth almost immediately, and as filming continued and went on, they fell in love with one another, and that is something that eventually became a major issue because, of course, Elizabeth and Bill Asher were married, as well as Richard Michaels was married himself. Now, it wasn't too long into their affair that people on set of Bewitched began to take notice that something more was going on rather than their professional relationship. So finding out about the affair, their respective marriages fell apart. 2 marriages fell apart. Bill Asher and Elizabeth Montgomery, as well as Richards and his wife. Now, both of their marriages ended in divorce, and it's interesting that wound up to be the same year, 1972, that Bewitched aired its final series. Now, I don't think this is accidental because, as I mentioned, Bill Asher was the director, Elizabeth Montgomery was the star, and because they divorced, essentially the show broke as well. Same thing with I Love Lucy. Desi Arnaz and Lucille Ball, they had their Lucy Desi Comedy Hour, the hour-long episodes. They got divorced, and boom, the show immediately ended. And you'll be interested to know that Elizabeth and Richard, even though they fell in love, they did not marry after divorcing. Elizabeth married someone else after Bill Asher. And so it's interesting to note these complexities in relationships that we can see a little bit of ourselves in her and in the other people in this story. I mean, we look at a show like Bewitched and we think everything is funny, happy-go-lucky, sweet. We get an image of who we think the person is, but then we forget that these people are professionals. They're professional actors who make us think that what we see is reality, but it's not. And so it's really interesting to see the inner workings of what is going on, not to demonize anyone, but to just understand a little bit more about them and the people that we love and maybe humanize them more. In fact, I think I like this show a little bit more, not because essentially they did something that was wrong, but because there's more humanity in here. There's more that we can relate to. There's more that we can understand and know that there's a lot more depth in these individuals than we initially think by just looking at their performances. So thank you so much. Let me know what you think about this. Did you know about this affair? Did you know about Elizabeth Montgomery? And for me, what's kind of more important is that this affair essentially ended the show, much like I Love Lucy, a divorce ending a whole series. And I think that's super important because when a powerhouse of a couple breaks up, it destroys pretty much everything around them, and a show is included in that. And I think that's very interesting in terms of television history. We'll see you all next time, and don't forget, everyone, be hopeful. Thank you to all my supporters, especially my Diamond tier patrons: Russ C, Sally N, Vito L, Citizen Kane 359, David D, Jerry D, Jennifer P, and Kevin K. If you want to join this list and be a patron supporter, it does help out so much, and I thank you ahead of time.